welcome once again to Tim's Vinyl Confessions.
Hey guys.
Once again, Matt is nice enough to
Welcome
let us
back, Tim.
use his space. Yes, and we got a few things in the background here. Let's see, Hurt Smile, Nuno, Van Halen,
What is that
Extreme. Well, what we're talking about today is our Extreme collections, culminating in a release that's just come out, which pretty much excited about. Extreme's a band that both of us have been a fan of for a while. Matt's been a fan, I think, longer than I have. Matt, what's your Extreme experience? And when did they first come onto your radar?
I actually never really even heard of their first album, so it would be their second album, the one that everyone knows, Pornography. Tim, that came out in 1990.
1990, yeah.
1990, okay. Yep. So, I think I saw the video for Decadence Dance.
That would have been the first
single. So, it's quite a... For me, it's a must-have guitar player's album. If you're really into guitar playing...
Nuno Bettencourt. He's the guy. He's like I think one of the logical successors to Eddie Van Halen, because not only was he a fantastic player, but he had such a sense of song. He could write such great melodies, and you could take the solos out and still can't figure out the riffs.
And that was it for me too. Actually, Tim mentioned the melodies and stuff. I've always been into vocal melody bands, even
excellent vocal harmonies. He and singer Gary Sharon. We'll talk about some of the high points of their career. I think a lot of people know them for one song, maybe two songs that are fine songs, but not representative of their overall sound. And they've just come out with something new. So. Not a lot of vinyl, but there is a little bit to go through, and there's some video. So this is kind of our Extreme collections on Tim's Vinyl Confessions. As Matt said, first album kind of came and went. I think our copies are pretty much identical.
Oh, let's pull it upside right
there. This came out in 1989 on A&M Records, and I don't know what the CRC. That's a Columbia House issue, but so is this. Yours is a U.S., I believe, and mine is Canadian. But
very basic.
The artwork is a little bit minimum. These guys were together, I think, 4 years before they put out an album. And inside of the album, there's not a lot. The lyrics to all the songs. One thing that was, even on this first album, the first album is kind of like one that people went back and sort of revisited after the fact, after the second one had become so big. There was something a little bit different about them. The subject matter they would write about. But more than anything, singer Gary Sharon and Nuno Bettencourt, the guitar player, who's also a singer, their harmonies were fantastic. They really were kind of like a modern day Queen in so much as that they really had that, and that's a huge influence on them, which gets into how I got into them. And also another Queen connection that a lot of people maybe don't know is that this first album was actually produced by Mac, or Reinhold Mac, I think is his full name, but he produced the early 80s Queen stuff. He also produced Billy Squier. He had a very unique production sound. So it wouldn't surprise me if Extreme said, we want Roy Thomas Baker to produce our albums, and he's not available. Okay, we want Mac then.
The only knock I could really give Extreme is that it's too bad they hadn't come out a few years earlier. They would have been much bigger.
They were a little late in the game. And the one, for a long time, this was the only piece of Extreme vinyl I had. This was their very first single, their very first major label single, Kid Ego, from the first album. And this is a Canadian version on just a typical A&M sleeve. The B-side is another song from the first album called Smoke Signals. So not a lot of Extreme vinyl. Again, like Matt said, they did kind of come up late in the game for that. So that's kind of the story of their first album. The second album is where things picked up, though it took a while, but this was the one that did it. 1990, summer 1990, if I recall. Pornography, Extreme 2, subtitled A Funked Up Fairy Tale. Yeah, very funky band, too. They had a great sense of rhythm, and they could be as heavy as anything. As a matter of fact, this album, I don't know if it's their heaviest, but it does have the heaviest production. It's none other than the legendary Michael Wagner produced this one.
Right.
And best known for, well, you name it, the Skid Row, Metallica, Alice Cooper, he's worked with a ton of people. Great artwork on this album. They really went all out. It is a bit of a concept album. They've got their little mascot. I think his name was Francis. The little mischievous looking boy smoking a cigar. Kind of like a slightly more grown up version of the kid on the Van Halen 1984 album. I mentioned Van Halen. That'll come into play later. So lyrics to the songs interwoven with some little comic,
we would have originally had this on cassette. So.
Most people would have. Picture the band as it was then, pretty much unchanged except for the drummer situation has changed a few times. And I do like, it's not a remastered version, there is a remastered version of it. I do like the design of the CD itself. It's got the handprint on it. This is a fantastic album, and if people owned one Extreme album, it was this. This one, Slow to Start, Decadence Dance was the first single, then Get the Funk Out, which is a fantastic grooving hard rock song, amazing guitar playing.
Pat Badger's bass playing too.
Oh yeah, he's really good. Yeah, the whole band was just kind of, even like their drummer Paul Geary, what he did was very simple, but it was always tasteful and always in the right spot. But this album went something like double platinum eventually. It had been out for almost a year, and then, as is the case, a song that really had a lot, was way off to the side of their normal sound, got picked up. And the song, of course, is More Than Words. An acoustic ballad, went all the way to #1, got played on just about every format. It was everywhere. And because of that, it kind of brought this album up from below, like falling out of the charts, to back up the charts. They did follow it up, and a lot of people have forgotten about this. They did follow it up with another hit single, a top 5 single called Wholehearted. And that was about it, and it got them going. And very much like if anyone knows the story of Mr. Big, almost the same story a year later. First album came and went. Second album was out for almost a year. Then their song To Be With You became this #1 hit, an acoustic ballad. And same type of story. So they get typecast as this, we need another acoustic ballad. And Extreme was never going to be just about one sound. There's a song on there, 7 Sundays, which is like I don't know how, it's kind of, it's the closest thing they've come to sounding like an actual Queen song, I think.
Let's talk about that record.
And then, When I First Kissed You was almost like a Sinatra type of song. And then they've got like heavy, like groove songs. Like I mentioned, Get the Funk Out. He-Man, Woman Hater is like that. The song Porno Graffiti is like that. When I'm President actually has a little bit of rapping in it. I mean, not flat out rapping, but just very rhythmic rhyming in the verses. But then, and then a song like, Song for Love is just kind of like a power ballad that you would expect of that era. And it kind of begins as it ends with the rainfall. It really is a concept album. And there's also, for your guitar freaks out there, there's a brief, in the tradition of Van Halen, there is sort of a standalone blistering guitar part called Flight of the Wounded Bumblebee, which is funny because on the original album, you can't just listen to that if you wanted to. Conversely, you can't skip straight to He-Man, Woman Hater. But as we get to a little bit later, they do a little bit something about that. So that was their, I don't want to say their moment in the sun, but that was definitely their commercial peak. Although, they're still around, they're still touring, and they're still, playing theaters and things like that. It's just, they became, most bands have a peak, and for them, that was it. And it was, I guess not on that tour, but I really didn't get into Extreme at this point. I don't know why. I think they were just that little bit different. There was just something different about them I just couldn't grasp. I didn't get it. But when I got into Queen in early '92, Extreme were one of the bands. They were actually probably the least known band that appeared at the Freddie Mercury Concert for Life, and they came out and they did a medley of Queen songs, just seamless, one right into the other. And I thought, okay, I think this is a band worth.
Watch that.
I think this is a band that's worth checking out. And later that year, in 1992, came the third Extreme album. I think we're both pretty big fans of. 3 Sides to Every Story. And
now, after the success of their second album, here we have 3 sides.
Yeah.
And they basically went all in, I would say, with this record.
I guess it was. This is another concept album. It's split into 3 parts: Yours, Mine, and The Truth. Yours is a little bit of the heavier side. You've got Warheads, Cupid's Dead, kind of a heavy, funky rocker, Peacemaker Dive. Mine's a little bit more reflective, maybe not lighter, but more personal. And The Truth is, well, The Truth kind of it's their Beatles suite, right? It's kind of all over the place. It's got an orchestra and it's got all kinds of things. And our CDs are pretty much identical. I believe Matt's is a BMG direct version. Mine is from Columbia House. Cool packaging inside this. I really think that the Queen influence, someone pointed this out to me. I never thought about it before. But if you look at this and then you look at The Miracle by Queen, all the faces together, I think that might be what they were going for here. Like I said, it folds out, all of these pictures here, which this CD, when I dug this out for the first time in quite a while, I discovered something else that I'd forgotten about. Way back in the day, before digital downloads and all of that, radio stations they'd get serviced these sampler discs. And this is a sample from May 1993 for an A&M sampler. And this has everything from Aaron Neville, Carole King, Eddie Murphy, Apache Indian, the Cranberries. And way, way down at track 11 is Extreme. The reason I kept this, Extreme, Am I Ever Gonna Change? That's an edit, because it was a single, but it was edited down from the much longer album version. I don't think they ever did a video for it. And something that I haven't had for too awful long, but I saw it on Discogs, reasonably priced, and I said, I've got to see what this looks like on vinyl. And so this is 3 sides to every story on vinyl. This is from the UK. And this is very, very cool for a lot of reasons. It's in decent shape. I don't know if you can see the spine on there.
So at this point, probably you wouldn't be able to buy that in North America.
There wouldn't have been. I don't think there would have been a domestic version of it. There may have been one for Pornograffiti, not in many quantities. So yeah, by this time you just didn't see vinyl in North America. Now, one thing that's extra cool about this is that on the Mine part of it, there's a song called Don't Leave Me Alone, which did not appear on the CD. It appeared, for whatever reason, on the cassette. Usually CDs would have the songs, but it must have just been a length issue. They didn't want to put it a double CD because, of course, double CDs cost more, and subsequently there's not as much commercial value. Now, it's a double record. It's not a gatefold, so they both came in these white sleeves. I'll show you what these look like. This is actually an A&M logo that they weren't using at the time in North America, or towards the end of the 80s with records. This is more of an early 80s logo, late 70s, early 80s. I've got Y&T records that have this logo, 38 Special, Nazareth. But this one, they used this in the UK for 3 sides to every story. And there's more to it. It came with this gigantic poster of the band. And I'm happy to say whoever owned this record did not put it up, because there's no holes in it. And here's all the lyrics and all the credits, same as would be inside the CD.
Very
so
cool, Tim.
that's a cool thing to have. And of course, that album did okay. It went gold. I think it went platinum in Canada. There were no big singles that spun off it like Pornograffiti, although there were some fine, fine songs. Rest in Peace, Stop the World, Tragic Comic. Those were all singles and videos. But it was a good long time before Extreme re-emerged, of course, by now, well into the grunge period. And although Extreme did not fit into the hair metal category, they got lumped in with it. Absolutely. Simply for the fact they had long hair, they weren't down in the dumps, they were melodic, they were shredding guitars. So it was a tough time for bands like this, and they all kind of got lumped in together, and a lot of bands really, really struggled.
Here's their 4th album.
Yeah. Waiting for the Punchline. I don't know if that was intentional. This came out in early 1995. I remember this period quite well. Long wait on this one. Paul Geary, their drummer, had left. He went on to become a manager, actually done quite well for himself. He manages Godsmack, among others. Mm-hmm. So he's done all right. So the drummer on this album is Mike Mangini. So Mike Mangini, after Extreme went on hiatus, which we'll get to, he went on to play with Steve Vai. I think he plays on Fire Garden. Yes. Excellent drummer. And of course, for the last 5 years, he's been the drummer in Dream Theater. So you might think, well, boy, does Extreme's music call for a drummer like that? I don't know, but it works on this album. And I don't know, this album was one that I listened to, and I listened to, and I listened to. Kind of like another album that came out right around the same time as this, Skid Row's Subhuman Race. Okay. It just never fully took hold. I don't know why, it just didn't. There are some great songs on here.
Well, after the bombast of their 3rd album, this is like Extreme. It almost, some of the stuff sounds like demos, and I wouldn't be surprised to hear that.
Very raw production on this album. This is what the band looked like in '95.
Got the sad clown on the cover. I mean, it's all very dour, and
it was the time. And not only that, but you also had the sad clown taken a step further. on the inside of the CD tray, you've got this happening. I mean, Hip Today was a single from it. Great song. You know, they're good.
Amazing drum sound.
Yeah, I like the drum sound on that. I actually like the production sound on this quite a bit. But, you know, their time is sort of, they couldn't, there was no big tour behind that album. And a lot of bands that put albums out, like I mentioned Skid Row already, there was Tesla, there was Cinderella. They were all struggling. All of these bands were just, and time has been kinder to them. But at the time, it seemed like a real thick line was drawn in between the rock bands that were going to make it and the rock bands.
Yeah. And it took its toll on Extreme because...
Well, I mean, it shook up their confidence, and so...
And after that record, they basically
they broke up or went on hiatus. I don't think there was any real personal animosity, but they did go their separate ways, and they went their separate ways for quite a long time. Now, a few things happened. You can see in the background here, this is a peculiar-looking CD. This is Nuno Betancourt's solo album, which came out in '97. It's called Schizophonic, which actually Gary Sharon does appear on.
Oh, right.
So again, not a lot of animosity, just like, hey guys, it's not happening right now. The most high-profile thing that happened with any of the members of Extreme in this period is Gary Sharon being tapped to take over for Sammy Hagar and Van Halen for Van Halen 3, and that came out in 1998. Another album that I really struggled to like. I wanted to like it, and I really do like a good half of it. There are those who would say it's quite good. Maybe some of our co-hosts, but anyway, so Extreme as a band were defunct. They were latent. At some point, and we'll get into this.
Okay, you're going to talk about...
There were some, the Inevitable Best Of came out, which I don't have, which Matt can talk about here.
An Accidental Collocation of Atoms, okay.
Yeah, that's A&M put that out. And, you know,
songs.
It's a good starter for Extreme. I remember picking it up and looking at it, and I usually buy things like that, and I thought to myself, if that had Don't Leave Me Alone on it, I would have bought it. But it didn't have anything different on it. But, you know, the artwork's kind of interesting. It's one of those things you can kind of tell the band had...
Very much at the time. You got that kind of haphazard, grungy kind
Very much, yes. I'm surprised if it had been a new band release, it probably would have been a picture of the group as kids. Because they did that a lot, too.
They've wasted all this space with giving the credits for each song. It would have been nice if they'd said something about it.
There'd been a little write-up about them, yeah.
Here's 6 panels of the credits, but...
So, what's that you got there? I don't think I recognize this.
This is just a Live in Montreal. This is from 1992. It's just called Northern Night. I believe that's obviously a bootleg, so I can't even remember where I came up with that. But it's got a good chunk of their first 2 albums on there. I
don't think I've ever seen this before, so that's cool. I like the logo they used at this point, the one they used on their first couple of albums. It kind of it morphed a little bit after that. Mm-hmm. For a bootleg, it's very well done.
Yeah.
It's very good packaging.
I had to pick it up because...
Also, I guess before waiting for the punchline, we talked about this on well, I don't think we did talk about it, but on the Kiss Final episode, they were the only band that I actively like and bought albums by that had a song that appeared on the Kiss My Ass tribute album.
Oh, okay.
They did sort of a funky version of Strutter, which incorporates a little bit of God of Thunder in the middle of it, which is kind of neat. And Gary Sharon sounds an awful lot like Paul Stanley on that one track. I never noticed it before.
Love to watch that video again, too, maybe.
Yeah, for sure. So
we got a few, some DVD collections of their videos. This is not the best one, actually. You've got the definitive.
Universal put out a big series of these. I've seen ones on Night Ranger, 38 Special, anybody that ended up on the A&M, Geffen, MCA, and it's got 5 videos on it, literally. They were just quick little, quite conveniently priced, I think, video collections for... You know, the impulse buy type. They're kind of the equivalent of the 20th century CDs that they put out.
There's nothing very extremely appealing to this. Like, it's only 5 videos, but if you actually listen to this, I'll have to play this for you sometime. The mixes of the songs are a little different.
Oh, okay.
And there's more of his vocals brought out and stuff, and it's really interesting to listen to if you know, like...
Oh, if you're really familiar with the recorded
songs,
version.
Yeah.
Okay. So Matt and I both have this. We've got his in the background here. This is called a really definitive DVD, and at the time it was. This is called Video Graffiti. I believe they put out a VHS tape post-porn graffiti with all the videos up till that point, but this DVD collects those and everything past that. So it's got Rest in Peace, Stop the World, Tragic Comic, and one video I've never seen, or I had never seen, called Cynical, from Waiting for the Punchline, video for Hip Today, some live cuts, and this one is much, it's better done, more care gone into the packaging. Interesting that there's no photos here that include Mike Mangini, even though he's on a couple of the songs. But that's basically what you were getting for Extreme. There was no new product for a good long time, but thankfully that all ended. And for me, 2008 was a fantastic year for me musically. From my point of view, there were so many bands that I liked that put out new albums, and in many cases were albums that were quite good, and bands that hadn't put out albums in quite a long time. So that year, that's the year that Journey put out Revelation. They got Arnel Pineda. They had a big comeback. Honeymoon Suite put out Clifton Hill, first new album from them in over 6-7 years. AC/DC put out Black Ice. Def Leppard put out songs from the Sparkle Lounge. Metallica put out Death Magnetic. Tesla put out Forevermore. Whitesnake, first new album from them in over 10 years, Good to Be Bad. Bands were active again and actually recording again, and one of the ones that was the most pleasant surprise was Extreme Saudage de Rock. It's spelled S-A-U-D-A-D-E-S. Saudage de Rock. I don't like the way the song titles are written. It's just about impossible to read, but this was a fine, fine return to form. Very, very happy. It came out on a small label called Open E Records. Never heard of it, never will again, probably. That's what the disc itself looks like. Matt and I have identical copies. I thought this was very, very strong. Sonically probably sounds the most like Waiting for the Punchline.
Yes.
Again, a different drummer on this album, Kevin. I don't know how to say his name. Figueredo. I'm probably butchering his name. He with the fine mutton, the fine mutton chops there. Great drummer. Nice raw sound on here. You know.
Back to he's got the really simple kit.
Yeah, it didn't sound like, it sounded like it could have come out 2-3 years after Waiting for the Punchline, but it had it didn't have that dourness to it that they've sort of fallen into. And so they went on tour for that album, and that tour was documented. Matt will tell you about the results
So
of
in
that.
2009, here we have Extreme playing in their hometown of Boston, doing a really cool set. This is called Take Us Alive, which is
one of the songs
from the
yeah.
album. So.
This is put out on Frontiers. This came out on CD as well. I don't have it in either form, but this is a fantastic show. It's got, it basically touches on high points from all of their albums. So Gary and Nuno, Pat and Kevin. And Gary Sharon is one of those freak singers that has lost, I don't think, hardly any of his vocal range. So something that started happening at some point during, I think, the 2000s, where bands would, when certain classic albums would reach milestones of 20 years, 25 years, they'd go out and it would be part of the, I don't want to say the gimmick, but part of the hook of the tour. They would do an album from start to finish. Now, inevitably, what this meant is that the fans would get to hear some songs that the band had either never played live or hadn't played live since the tour of that album. And Extreme's Porn Graffiti celebrated, believe it or not, its 25th anniversary in 2015. So the band went on tour supporting, or commemorating it. And just last couple of months, there appeared several, there appeared several albums that commemorated this. This is the CD version. Porn Graffiti Live 25. It's also called Metal Meltdown Live. This was recorded at the Hard Rock Casino in Las Vegas. And this is simply them playing the Porn Graffiti album, start to finish, in order, and does it ever sound good? And this has Flight of the Wounded Bumblebee and He-Man Woman Hater as separate tracks. So if you don't feel like listening to Nuno shredding his way for a bit and you want to skip straight to the song, you can do that now. So continuing the theme of the artwork, this is just a fine sounding album. This one I have is on Loud and Proud Records. And Matt's got something in his hand which is actually going to be unboxed right now.
Tim's waiting for his version of this in the mail. But this is essentially what he's got, the CD plus the Blu Ray, plus I think it even has a DVD. Yeah, it has the DVD as well. So it's like a little mini box set, and I thought I'd open that for you here.
Yeah, I'm still waiting for my copy. For whatever reason, Amazon seems to be backlogged, as has happened.
So we haven't seen this yet. I've tried actually intentionally not to watch all the videos that they've released from it.
The little clips that we've seen of the previews look very, very cool because it's a documentary on Extreme, a band that really don't know all that much about other than what's provided to us in the albums. So far, there's been no Extreme book. There's been no sort of behind the music on them. For you younger people, if you've somehow stumbled upon this video and you think that the guitar player looks an awful lot like the guy that's been playing with Rihanna, you would be correct. That's been the main thing that's kept Extreme off the road because he's getting a good paycheck doing that. But I guess that speaks to his versatility as well, that he can, just amazing. And hopefully we see a new Extreme studio album.
I heard they were working on one, getting into the studio. Yeah. Also, I just wanted to mention, have a look on Amazon and the like for these Metal Meltdown collections. I believe Twisted Sister
has one. Great White, not the Jack Russell version, they have one. It's becoming a series.
Yep, and this is I think this is one of those Hard Rock Casino. It's like they call it a residency in Las Vegas. And
like Def Leppard did with Viva Hysteria.
Yeah, I have a Guns N' Roses one. Definitely check those out.
So thanks for watching this edition of Tim's Vinyl Confessions, and hopefully, if all you've heard from Extreme is more than words and maybe wholehearted, do yourself a favor, hit up YouTube and listen to some of their other stuff. They're just, at the core, they're a good hard rock band that are just capable of so much more. Thanks for watching. Do I just stop suddenly playing and then?
Sure.
And we just kind of look at the camera Is this going to be the beginning of this?
No, I'm going to cut it in when we... it doesn't matter.
I don't know. Oh, well, yeah, you think of something.